President Muhammadu Buhari is back in the country after attending the 5th European Union African Summit in Abidjan, the economic capital of Côte d'Ivoire. Before he left Abidjan, President Buhari held a closed-door meeting with former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and other heads of government from Africa and Europe. The president was also part of working sessions where the leaders discussed the theme, investing in the youth for a sustainable development. At the end of the summit, President Buhari and 5 other African leaders called for an immediate roadmap to pave the way for negotiations between the Togolese government led by President Faure Gnassingbé and the opposition movement. Meanwhile, President Buhari is expected to attend a counter-terrorism summit in Jordan on December 2nd. Nigeria is greater than being apart Nigeria is greater together than being apart is exemplified by late former Vice President Dr. Alex Ekwueme. That's the view of Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo when he paid a condolence visit to the wife of the late elder statesman, Mrs. Beatrice Ekwueme, at his family home in Abuja. He was accompanied by the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, and other government functionaries. According to him, the most important thing about the late former vice president was that he stood for the unity of Nigeria. Dr. Ekwueme was Nigeria's vice president during Alhaji Shehu Shagari's administration from 1979 to 1983. He died at a London hospital on November 19th.
The most important thing is that he stood for unity. He stood for the common purpose of a people who can really work together despite tribe or ethnicity and all of that. And I think he stood out as someone who wasn't who was detribalized and who understood that we're greater together than apart. So I think he was exemplary in that sense, and I think that the example that he's laid for us all is that we're certainly greater together than apart. We owe a duty to our society to continue to empower ourselves and empower all others to ensure that it's better. And sometimes that calls for even the readiness to make the ultimate sacrifice. And I think that he showed at that time, a very, very dangerous time, as you probably imagine, that he was prepared to go all the way for the nation. So I think that today we celebrate that, and we celebrate his life, a very exemplary life.
We'll be staying back in Abuja as we join Linda Kigbe for more on the news at 10. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Amarachi. Now, one of Nigeria's commercial banks, Union Bank of Nigeria, is challenging the permanent forfeiture of the property linked to the dismissed Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Ayoke, where the EFCC recovered huge sums of money. The management of the bank is asking a federal high court in Lagos to cede the property to them following a breach of an agreement by the new owners of the building, Chobe Ventures. The bank claims Chobe Ventures, which is also linked to the sacked Director General of the NIA and his wife, had signed an agreement not to use the flats for any illegal activity, and a breach of the agreement will result to the forfeiture of the property to Union Bank. Counsel to Union Bank, Ajibola Aribisala, had told the court that the flat in question forms part of the building which originally belongs to the former PDP chairman, Adamu Muazu. Mr. Muazu was said to have mortgaged the property to Union Bank in order to secure a loan granted by the bank to his company, AAA Properties and Investment Limited. And after the expiration of a tenure of the loan, Union Bank sold the property to Chobe Ventures for 360 million naira. The bank is claiming that its rights and interest in the property will be severely jeopardized if Flat 7B is severed from the rest of the property and forfeited to the federal government. But the EFCC, in documents also put before the court, says that Union Bank, having received sufficient consideration for the property, has transferred all its interest to Chobe Ventures and cannot interfere with the forfeiture of the flat. The trial judge has fixed January the 10th, 2018 for arguments on the application. A former Director General of the Bureau of Public Procurement, Mrs. Obiageli Ezekwesili, has faulted the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, for not following due process as recommended by the Public Procurement Act in the award of contracts by the NNPC. Mrs. Ezekwesili, who is a lead discussant at a roundtable to analyze the issues surrounding the October face-off between the Group Managing Director of the NNPC and the Minister of State for Petroleum, argues strongly that the NNPC breached the nation's public procurement procedures, as there is no provision in the procurement law that says the President or any individual can approve such contracts.
The heat generated from the leaked memo on October 2017 by the Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Ibe Kachukwu, indicting the Group Managing Director of the NNPC for not following due process in the awards of contracts may have died down from the executive and legislative point of view. But this is certainly not the case with some Nigerians. At this roundtable organized by members of the civil society organizations in Abuja, the crux of discussion centers on whether due process was followed in the award of contracts listed in the leaked document. The leaked memo from the Minister of State for Petroleum in October this year alleges that the NNPC awarded contracts that are above $20 million without the consent of the board. The NNPC also responded by saying that the allegations were baseless, as it does not require approval of the board for contracts, a position that the lead discussant at this forum has faulted.
The approving authority of the process is not the board, is not the tender board. That's where the confusion is coming. There is the process, but then there is the completion of the process, and then the submission of the process to an approving authority. And what the NNPC management and the GMD are saying is that there is no power residing in the board to approve anything that they have done. All they need to do is to do their process and take it to the president. They are wrong. The idea of the public procurement reform was to ensure separation of powers in the decision making regarding the expenditure of public resources.
Other discussants also criticized the lack of transparency in the extractive industries, calling on citizens to urgently push for legal reforms.
On the issues of these leaked letters and all that, I think for me and for a number of people at Foster, I think at the heart of it is the issue of the Petroleum Industry Bill. The fact that the governance in the sector is just not clear. And I think that that is what we should be pushing for.
The biggest challenges around this whole process is the lack of transparency to the citizens, I would say, and to sort of like the various oversight bodies in explaining to us what the contracting process should look like.
Issues about revenue accountability, industry legislation and due process in the award of contracts have been re-emerging at the NNPC. And the consensus at this gathering is that citizens should continue the debate until the nation's oil company, NNPC, is fixed.
The federal government has continued to react to the reports on the slave trading in Libya involving some Nigerians. The President's Senior Special Assistant on Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, Mrs. Abike Dabiri-Iriwa, while speaking on her political program Politics Today, warns Nigerians against going to Libya because of the situation in the country. She has promised that the Buhari government is working to ensure more youths are gainfully engaged to avoid dangerous expeditions in search of greener pastures.
The NEMA
my office, IOM, told the world, told Nigerians that avoid Libya. It's deadly, it's dangerous, don't go there. And then you recall that even on your news, you have cases of Nigerians being brought back from Libya on a regular basis. So Nigeria has been bringing back its citizens from Libya. You're walking for about 3,000 kilometers. That's about flying 3 hours if we're going to Europe. So you can imagine the dangerous journey. But let's look at what is going on. You'll say poverty. Yes, government must do the needful, create an enabling environment, provide jobs and all that, but it goes beyond that. What do you say of the mother who sells her land and pays off $4,000 for her daughter to go to Europe? We should look at the family value and the systems. What do you say of a gentleman, one of those that returned, who sold everything he had in his shop, got about 3-4 million naira, changed to dollars, and paid traffickers? For every person who goes on that journey, a trafficker is being empowered. A trafficker is getting richer. And you know, human trafficking is now more attractive than drug trafficking. It's now easier to get a drug peddler than a human trafficker. So many things to be done. Yes, government has a role to play, and government must do that. President Buhari stressed that in Abidjan just yesterday as to the fact that this administration, though made a bad situation, but will do everything possible to bring smiles to the faces of Nigerians. That is on one side. But traffickers must be prosecuted, must be arrested, and they must be known. There's a whistleblower policy by NAPTIP. Report traffickers, they are amongst you. And I'll say something again, Michelle. Slavery begins here. The slavery begins here. When you sell, for every trafficker, you're sold from here.